right. Welcome to the BCST podcast. We are joined today by two-time Olympian Kara Lynn Joyce, friend of the program, or at least friend of mine. And Kara also happens to be the only woman to have won the 50 and 100 freestyle in 4 consecutive NCAA championships. Many-time national team member, founder and CEO of LEAD. Can we call you that?
Absolutely.
Is that the right term?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to kind of talk about her swimming career today and how that led her to what she's doing now. So we'll kind of just start by you telling us your story as a age group swimmer and how that kind of led you down the path.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, and I love that you brought your women onto the podcast today. Your coaching women. It's really, really important that we have female role models as athletes, and so I love this. And I am a friend of the program. I'm a friend of BCST and you personally, Ash. So we'll call it both. I fall under both umbrellas.
There you go.
But yeah, I guess I'll just jump into my background and how I got to where I am today. I grew up in upstate New York, mostly Saratoga and Rochester. And I started swimming when I was 5 years old. It's pretty young to start on a club team, but I have 2 older brothers, and both of my older brothers wanted to be on the swim team, and I wanted to do gymnastics. And so since I was the youngest and the only girl, my opinion didn't matter, and we all joined the swim team, which, you know, ended up working out. I'm 6 feet tall, so I can only imagine how gymnastics would have ended for me. But there's just something different about swimming. It's different from soccer. It's different from baseball, any sport. There's something like so serene about being in the water and swimming laps. And so you're doing this thing by yourself, but you're surrounded with like-minded teammates and people. And from the moment I got in the water in my very first practice, I fell in love with the sport. And I didn't fall in love with the sport because I was the best one on the team. I was far from being anywhere close to that. I just fell in love with the feeling of being in the water and the feeling of being around my friends every day at the pool. And then just, you know, having siblings. I loved the idea of being able to race my brothers and practice every day. And, you know, being the youngest and the only girl, it just burns extra hard when your younger sibling beats you. So of course, like, that's all I ever wanted to do. But that took a long time for me. I was definitely the worst swimmer on the team for quite a while. But when I was 7 years old, I watched the Olympics, the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. And I remember I was like sitting on the bed with my mom, and she's folding laundry. And I was like, Mom, swimming's on TV. What is this? And she was like, oh, you know, this is the Olympics, Kara, where the greatest swimmers in the world get to compete. And at that Olympics in particular, it was very historic, but Summer Sanders won her gold medal in the 200 butterfly. And from that point forward, Summer Sanders became my hero. And not only that, I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, I want to go to the Olympics someday, just like Summer Sanders. And my mom was like, well, Kara, you know, Olympians can make it from one end of the pool to the other without stopping. And they do it every day in practice. And I was like, really? Because at that point, I still hadn't quite made an entire 25, you know, 2 years.
I like that she started with like stepping stones. Like, let's not get crazy. It's not, oh, they're the fastest swimmers in the world. No. They swim across the pool.
I mean, I think they've been trying to get me to do a 25 for a while. And I was just like, no, you know, I'm going to stop on the lane line. I'm going to stop on the wall and get in everyone's way. And you know how it is as a coach, when one person in the middle of the pool stops, it just backs everybody up.
Well, Katrina works with the really little ones. So like
I was that kid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Summer league, that's all it is.
So that day at practice, I went in and I did my first 25 without stopping. And I was like, I'm going to the Olympics. My mom said I have to do a full 25 without stopping, and then I can go. But it obviously it's not that easy. But from there, little by little, I started to see improvements. I wasn't the biggest kid. I am really tall now, but I grew so much later. So I was pretty much like a scrawny, very skinny, small kid. And, growing up, turning 10, 11, 12, you race girls that are more developed than you. And that can be really discouraging when you're like, this girl is a half a foot taller than me and looks like she's 5 years older than me, and I'm supposed to race her. Like, that can be really intimidating. So, but I feel like growing up the way I did, it almost made me more scrappy. Like, I would just find anything, any way to try to win. And it definitely helped to develop my competitive drive. And this is kind of like a random story that I don't really tell very often, but it relates a lot to, like, everything in my career came full circle. So little by little, I'd started to see slight improvements. And I'm talking like I'm 8, 9, 10 years old, and I'm starting to get better and better. And in upstate New York, we were in the Niagara LSC. And in order to qualify for zones, you had to go to district championships and finish in first or second place. So it's very reminiscent of like going to the Olympic trials and finishing in first or second to make the Olympic team. And so here I am, I'm 10 years old, and I think the meet was like a Thursday, like Thursday was like the mile, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I got to miss a day of school. It's like the big championship meet in March. And I had a really close group of friends on my team, and all of my best friends had qualified for zones. And I remember it was Sunday night. I had one race left, and I was like, God, I wanted to make zones so bad. And I came up short in every event. And the only race that I had left was the 100 breaststroke. And anybody that knows me, like, Kara and breaststroke do not go hand in hand. But I was in finals. And so, I was one of 8 people that had an opportunity to make zones. And there's just something about that pressure that I loved and that I thrived on. And I was like, you know what, if this is my last chance to do it, then this is where I'm going to do it. And people might not expect like me to be a 100 breaststroker, but here goes. And I ended up getting second place as a 10-year-old and qualifying for zones. I think that my best time that I went that night probably still stands as my best time today. My career as a breaststroker ended abruptly somehow. But that pressure and just like find any way to get it done, find a way to make it happen, really was like a theme that carried through my career. And because of that, I got to participate with my teammates and do something. I swear, going to zones, I feel like I wanted it more for the social aspect than like the swimming aspect at the time, but whatever, that's not really like that important, but
that's a real thing though. And I think that's a real motivator. And I know
I want to be with my friends, man. Yeah.
Even for our older kids who, don't have a winter junior cut or don't have a futures cut, like it becomes
you don't want to be left out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is actually, I'll feed into the next story. I went to zones. They were in Princeton, New Jersey. And I actually qualified for zones 3 times. Every time they were in New Jersey. Props to New Jersey, love it, but that's where I got to go. So I'm at zones, and as a 10-year-old, you don't swim prelims and finals. They only have timed finals. And I swam my 100 breaststroke, and I think I finished like 22nd place. Just like, it's a nothing, not really a monumental race at all. And then, I had like 2 more days to watch the meet and cheer for my teammates and stuff like that. And it was one day, it was the very beginning of finals. And so we're 10 years old. We're not competing in finals. We're all kind of running around like crazy people. And we hear on the PA system, it's like, attention, ladies and gentlemen, there is an Olympian on the pool deck that is signing autographs tonight. And her name is Anita Nall. And my friends and I are like, oh, an Olympian is here? Like, we had never met an Olympian. We live in upstate New York. This is the furthest we've ever traveled to swim. And so it was Anita Nall, who had just won a silver medal in the 1992 Olympics. So she's about 2 years removed from that swim. And my friends and I go running down the pool deck to where Anita Nall is standing. And so she's standing, quite a bit taller than the rest of us. And we're looking up at her, and she's like, hey guys, what's up? And we're like, Anita Knoll, can you sign our jackets, our zone wear? And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so she starts signing stuff, and then she looks up and she's like, does anybody have gum? And I'm like, my mom has gum, Anita. And so I run down the 50-meter pool up into the stands. I'm like, Mom, Anita Knoll, the Olympic swimmer, wants gum. And my mom reaches into her purse and she's trying to get like one piece out of her 32 pack. And she's like, here, just give her the whole 32 pack. I'm like, okay. So I get the gum and I run back down the 50-meter pool and I'm like, here, Anita, here's your gum. And she's like, oh, thanks. And she signs my jacket. Thanks for the gum, Anita Knoll. And I was like, I am going to keep this forever. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And I get the jacket back from her and I'm like, Anita, did you ever go to zones? And she's like, yeah, I went to zones. I think I was like 10 and I swam the 100 breaststroke. And I was like, did you win? And she was like, oh my gosh, no, I did not win. I probably got like 22nd place or something like that. And my eyes I was like, oh my gosh, Anita Knoll went to zones and got 20, like I still have a chance of making the Olympic team. And it doesn't end here as a 10-year-old getting 22nd. So that was like really eye-opening for me, and happened to correspond with my first ever meeting an Olympic swimmer. So it really cemented in my memory. But I remember leaving that meet feeling so much more motivated than I probably should have been, considering how I had performed. But that one interaction with Anita Knoll like changed everything for me moving forward, and just my outlook on, I always envision like my career, I have the Olympics at the very top of this ladder, and every really hard practice I do, every time I go to a meet and I make it a little bit, further, I go best time, I climb just one step higher on that ladder and get myself a little bit closer to that dream. And so qualifying for zones, getting second place when the pressure was on, that was one step higher for me. And so little by little after that, the improvements continued. And when I was 14 years old, I qualified for the Olympic trials. So things kind of escalated between 10 and 14.
How much of that kind of motivation was in Kara's head, and how much of that is being, I don't want to say fed to you, but it's coming from outside influences, whether that's parents, coaches, the people around you?
Yeah. I would say I'm pretty self-motivated. I hold myself to a pretty high standard, and it's something that I pull from just inside. Like I know what I'm capable of, and I need to figure out how I can get it out. I need to go to practice and work hard so I can pull that talent out, because I know it's inside of me, and I've always kind of had that feeling. But that being said, I had a great support system. 2 older brothers who swam competitively, who also competed in college and swam Division I. So, we were just a swimming family, probably not as well known as the Tannhauser family, but the Joyces were, pretty like all over the place in upstate New York in terms of, our going to meets, going to camps and stuff like that. And I think my brothers both had aspirations of qualifying for the Olympics someday as well, but it didn't work out for them. All the way, to the Olympics. They made it very far, just not that far. But for me, I just feel very lucky that I was in a great supportive family. I had excellent coaches, and it gave me the road that I needed, and it was my responsibility making my way down that road.
I don't want to cut anybody off. Yeah, gosh, that's so interesting. Of course I know like the highlights about your swimming career and whatnot, but that is such a crazy jump from 10 to 14. So what did you qualify? I think I know, but what did you qualify in for that first time?
Yeah. Well, I feel like being really scrappy, like a scrawny little kid, I was always kind of good at sprint freestyle, just because I was like, just put me in the water and let me spin my wheels. But that really developed into, I became a true sprinter and 50 freestyler. And when I was 14, I made Olympic trials in just the 50 free. And I qualified on like the last day that you could even fax in your meet entry to go to Olympic trials, like 2 weeks before the meet. And
that was probably what, the 2000
Olympic trials. So they were.
I was at that trials.
Were you really?
Watching in the stands? Yes.
I bet you did not see me. Well, you might have, because I was the slowest.
That Long Beach?
No, that was
the first
Indianapolis. Sorry.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. So I go to trials, and you know how like sometimes you're like at the very end of your taper, like maybe you tapered for like your big championship meet and you qualify for like the next meet after that, and you're like, oh man, I got to swim again. Like I kind of feel tapped right now. Like I got to hold on mentally to this season because it's just extended itself out another 2 weeks. And so by the time I got to trials, I remember just like feeling like I just wrung everything out, and I didn't have a whole lot left, but I wanted that experience really bad. And I also, in the back of my head, you know, it's like when you buy a lottery ticket and you're like, maybe. And in the back of my head, I'm like, maybe I'll get first or second. Like crazy things have happened in this world. And so of course, like the 50 free is on the last day of Olympic trials. It's like day 8 of the Olympic trials. And I get there, and I'm there on day 1. Like I'm such a swim nerd that I want to see all of these people. Like I want to see Erin Pearsall, Lenny Krieselberg, Jenny Thompson. I want to see everyone make the Olympics. And so for 7 days, I sat on the bleachers, on the pool deck at Olympic trials, watching this meet. And every day that went by, like something amazing happened. Every day somebody broke an American record, or somebody broke a world record, or, you know, Michael Phelps qualified for the Olympics at 15. But every day, you know, people were qualifying for the Olympic Games at a meet that I was supposed to be racing in. And the more time that went by, like the more like, I am so out of my league here. I do not belong here. Like that, those feelings, those doubts started to creep up. And finally on my race day, I get myself warmed up. I put on my suit, I put on my cap, and I put on my goggles extra tight because it's Olympic trials. And I sit on the bleachers, and I'm trying to like shake myself out. And my coach comes over, and she looks down at me, and she was like, yeah, you know, you got another hour until your race. Probably take your goggles off. And I'm like, right, take my goggles off. She looks at me again. She's like, wow, you don't look so good. You're like kind of green in the face. And I'm like, I just need to throw up really quick, and then I'm going to be ready to go. And she was like, okay, we're not going to throw up here. We're not throwing up at Olympic trials. And she started to talk to me about, you know, like take some really deep, slow breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Let's try to relax a little bit. Let's try to prepare for this race by relaxing instead of getting ourselves too worked up. And then she started to just kind of talk me through some really like motivational things. She was like, you know, you earned your place here just like everybody else. You do belong here. What if the person next to you is taller than you, if they're older than you, if they have a faster seat time, that doesn't matter. You earned your place just like they did. And not only that, you don't want to take your energy. Like right now, you're so nervous and worked up because you're worried about everyone else. And that's you giving them your energy. You don't want to give them your energy. You want to take all of your energy and put it right in between your 2 lane lines. That's the only thing you should worry about. Not what they're doing, not what the heat in front of you is doing. Just worry about what's in between your 2 lane lines. And so I'm like taking my slow, deep breaths, and she's like talking these sweet nothings into my ear. And I'm like, man, she's so right. I just have to swim a 50 free. Like, how bad could this be? And I'm at Olympic trials. I'm just going to think about my 2 lane lines. And so I get on the blocks and I dive in, and I'm kicking and pulling as hard as I can down the pool, like executing the race that I know how to swim. And then I touch the wall and I look up, and you know, I was in lane 5. And so lane 5, you're like, oh, that person should probably finish in the top, I don't know, 2 or 3. I finished 8th in my heat by a healthy margin too. And overall, I finished 75th place at Olympic trials. And man, I got out of the water and I was like, I am so embarrassed. Like my brothers are going to make fun of me for this for the rest of my life, that I just got 75th at trials. And everyone back home is going to know that I just got like, you know, last at Olympic trials. This is mortifying. And so I went and I sat in the locker room. I sat in the locker room and I started crying. And my coach walked in and she was like, all right, well, we don't have to talk about that race right now. Just put that behind us for now. But I do want you to come out to the pool deck and I want you to meet somebody. And I was like, right now? And she was like, yes, right now. I'm like, okay. And so I'm still crying and I'm looking down and I walk out to the pool deck and this person is like standing, you know, facing me, and I look up, and as soon as I see the person's face, I know exactly who it is. And she looks at me and she goes, are you Kara Lynn Joyce? And I was like, yeah. And so I start crying even harder. And she was like, well, my name is Summer Sanders and I want to talk to you. So I completely lose it. This is like my childhood hero. And we sit on the bleachers and she put her arm around me and she was like, Kara, you should be proud. You were at Olympic trials and you're 14. That is a huge accomplishment. And she's like, I didn't make the Olympics at my first Olympic trials either. And I was like, what, really? She's like, yeah, I got third in the 100 fly when I was like, right. Same thing. Yeah. And she was like, but you go home and you work hard for 4 years. When you come back, you're going to be taller, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be faster. That's going to be your time. But, right now, like, this was a great experience for you. And all you need to do is go home, go to practice, and give it an honest effort every day. Just give it an honest effort. And behind me in the stands, the way the pool is set up at IUPUI, they have the bleachers on deck, and then the fans sit in the stands, sit in the stands. And I hear my dad up in the stands behind me. He's like, Kara, turn around. And my dad had a wind-up camera, and he rolled up the wind-up camera and snapped a picture of Summer Sanders and I. And I made my parents go to CVS because this is before Instagram. So I wanted to get the 1 hour photo developed so I could see the picture right away. So right after that, like, we leave the pool, go to CVS. I have to get this picture of Summer Sanders and I. And we get it developed, and I get it, and I'm like, oh man, oh man, my face is so red. It's not coming out of my nose and cheeks, but I don't care. I'm with Summer Sanders. This is so cool. And I went home and I put the picture on my bulletin board. And for 4 years, I saw that picture, and I was like, you go to practice and you give it an honest effort. And really, I think maybe especially younger kids, we have this misconception, like, if you're going to go to the Olympics and you're going to be an Olympian, you have to be Olympic caliber your entire life. You have to start as an 8-year-old that's breaking national age group records. You have to be winning zones and junior nationals when you're 10, 12, 14. Like, none of that applied to me. And when you go to practice and you give it an honest effort, there are some days where you go to practice and you can have the greatest practice of your life. You never expected to be able to, go a certain interval or maybe even go a best time in practice. And other days you can go to practice and you're trying really hard and you're barely making the interval. You're going last in your lane. But that still counts as an honest effort. You don't need to have this Olympic caliber every day or assume that you would need an Olympic caliber every day. You just need to give it that honest effort. And when I was 18, I went back to Olympic trials. This was in 2004 when they were in Long Beach. And I walked into the meet and I was like, okay, I know that this meet is 8 days long. I know that every day there's amazing things happening, but I also know that I need to focus on what's in between my 2 lane lines. Like, that's where I'm going to put my energy. And I was very, very fortunate to qualify for the Olympics. In 2004, I won the 100 freestyle at Olympic trials, and I finished second in the 50 free. And so I got to swim 4 events in the Athens Games in 2004, the 50 free, the 100 free, the 400 free relay, and the 400 medley relay.
So was that after your first year at Georgia or before? So is that as a high school
right
senior?
Right after my freshman year of college.
Okay.
I was a young, I started college at 17, so I was still pretty young, but yeah. But I got that experience, right out of the gate, in the middle of being a college swimmer, and it was amazing, like, I don't know if, I feel like when I watched the Olympics on TV, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, everything's like sparkling and dazzling, and like, it's so different from any other swim meet. And then you get there and you're like, the pool's still 50 meters. There's like still 8 lanes, and I still have to swim the exact same race that I always swim. And so you almost expect everything to be different, but then to my delight, and I was very like happy to find out, like, wait a minute, this is no different than everything I've practiced every day. And all I have to do is exactly what I've been training to do. So yeah, but it was a great experience being able to do that at 18.
On that first Olympic coaching staff that you went to Athens with, how many women were there?
There were 0 women on the coaching staff.
We'll just keep that in the back of our heads as we move forward.
That's wild.
I was going to ask, just sounds like you've had some awesome role models, like in regards to coaches, and like your mom, she coached you as a young swimmer. How did that encourage you to start the lead organization and all that stuff?
I would say A lot of things led me down the path to what I do today. So today I run the Lead Sports Summit, which is a leadership summit for teenage girl swimmers, and we're growing to an online platform with courses for all different female athletes. But growing up, I had my older brothers as incredible mentors to me. And I mentioned I was 17 when I started college. So I was always like kind of the youngest kid in my group, like whether it was swimming in Michigan with the University of Michigan men's team. I was in high school and a girl swimming with a college men's team, or even starting college as a freshman. I'm the youngest kid on the team by probably almost a year. And I never really was in that mentor position, but I always had great mentors. I was so fortunate to have incredible coaches. I mean, I swim for John Urbanchek, Jack Bowerly, David Marsh, just people that have cemented themselves in this sport as some of the greatest of all time. Like I don't even know how, I got to be so lucky to have that, but I'm very fortunate for that. And when I got to be a little bit older, so I moved to Denver, Colorado in 2011, and I started training with Missy Franklin for the 2012 Olympics. And that was truly the first time in my life where I was in a mentor position for younger swimmers, and not just Missy. I was swimming with a high school club team. Like basically, if I came and like swam with BCST at 25, you guys would be like, oh, what's that old lady doing here? But we were doing practices together every day. And I quickly realized that everything I did and everything I said and the way I handled myself was being absorbed like a sponge from all the kids that were there swimming with me. And it became very important to me to take that role seriously. And I wanted to be a good role model for all of those kids. And I wanted to be a good role model for Missy. And after I retired from swimming, I started to do a lot of private coaching and stuff like that. And that's really when I started to work a lot with teenage girls. And you guys, we're all in the swimming world. There are not a lot of female coaches that are in swimming, unfortunately. And like Ash said, a lot of times they only end up working with the younger kids on the team. And so I was doing private coaching, private lessons, working with a lot of teenage girls, and they would come in really frustrated about, their championship meet, that they didn't swim as well as they were hoping to, or they were overwhelmed with, things, drama and teenage stuff going on their high school team that they wanted to talk about. And none of the issues that they were coming in to work on involved like, oh, your 6 beat kick is only a 5 beat kick, or like you're not swimming as fast because your hips are just 15 degrees off center. It was never about that. And we would always just try to talk through their problems, and it really ended up helping a lot of them. And it made me realize that not only are there not enough female coaches and role models in the sport, but there is just such a need for it. And so that really led to creating the Lead Summit.
That's awesome. I know we've had a girl on the team who's attended before, and she absolutely loved it. So maybe even twice, I'm not sure. But
Gracie.
Yeah, Grace Bauer.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, outside of lead being, talk about the mental side of the sport. And there's a lot of people who lead has given a platform for. Coach Kristen and Dr. Megan Cannon have both been out to visit us, both coming off of lead summits. Talk a little bit about kind of the importance of that, and where maybe you can draw from your own past experiences and not having that as a teenage collegiate swimmer.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, when I was at Georgia, so I competed for the University of Georgia, and Jack Bowerly was the head coach there, and Jack and I had a great relationship, but the assistant coach was Carol Capitani, and Carol is now the head coach at the University of Texas. And the more I got to know Carol throughout my 4 years, the more I realized just how important her role on that team was. And a lot of times, as an assistant coach, like your role is very much to support the head coach. And the older I got, the more I was like, wait, so Jack is doing this stuff because Carol told him that that's what okay. Like he doesn't just like know that instinctively, like how to like handle like young women and stuff. And it's because he has the support of like a female on his coaching staff who's very intuitive and knows how to work with him really well. But having Carol as, one of my mentors and one of my, very few female coaches was extremely instrumental for me. And so when I started to work on the Lead Summit and build that out, I really wanted to bring together a staff of women who could have that same impact on young girls that Carol had on me. And that meant, bringing in a professional confidence coach like Kristen Shefchunas, who is, nobody compares to Coach Kristen in terms of confidence coaching and what she's able to do with young women. And bringing in specialists in leadership and sports psychology like Tony Armstrong and Dr. Megan Cannon. And also talking about nutrition, which is something that's very personal to teenage girls. It's personal to all of us, but, especially teenage girls. And something really interesting started happening. I mean, don't get me wrong, like from the beginning, my expectations were blown away. Every time we host an event, I'm like, I cannot believe how amazing our speakers did, how much they brought, their A game to this event and really changed the lives of so many girls. But something interesting started to happen with the girls that were attending the summit. And, I felt like at first it was like, okay, well, we just want to give you all the tools that you need to be successful, and not just be successful as an athlete, but be successful as young women, working your way through high school and into college. And what are all of the different things that we can work on that will help you with both of those journeys, because they're very, intertwined, being an athlete and being a young woman and working towards, growing into, your college self. But we started to have girls who would come to the event for the second year, the third year. We have tons of girls signed up for their fourth year. And they're like, you know what? Like, I am probably not going to go to the Olympics like Missy Franklin and win 5 gold medals. But, coming to Lead made me realize that I want to be a sports psychologist like Dr. Megan Cannon. And I want to be a woman who works in sports. And we've had girls that are like, or parents that are like, my daughter wants to be a swim coach now. And she wants to be able to have an impact on other young women that come after her in the sport. Even talking about it right now, like it gives me such chills, but bringing together so many women leaders and, they all run their own businesses. They're all professionals in what they do. And it's something different. It's not just a coach on the pool deck. It's they work in different fields, but all in sports, has led so many of our girls to kind of see what the possibilities are. Like, okay, maybe you don't go to the Olympics, or maybe you don't become a swim coach, but there are all of these other opportunities that you can have working in sports as a woman. And there is not a single field in any organization, front office, coaching, medical, whatever. There is not a single field that has too many women in it in sports right now. So there is openings everywhere and just a greater need for it. And that's something that I didn't see coming, but it kind of blows me away every time.
And we're starting to see it more and more in what we would consider non-traditional spots. There are 3 women assistant coaches in the NFL now. And if I told somebody that even 4 years ago, people would think I was nuts. So seeing that, and as the father of 2 daughters, fostering that is a big part of how we've built our team and built our careers.
It's part of that. It's hard to be what you can't see, and to, be 15 years old and have no aspirations of being a sports psychologist or being a swim coach or being a college coach or being a confidence coach, whatever it is, because you've never seen a woman do that. It can be very eye-opening. And I hope that, not just with the Lead Summit, but with a lot of other things that are coming up these days that are empowering young women, I hope that there's more opportunities for them to see all the different things that they can be and things that they contribute to being a female in sports.
I think that's awesome. And I think one thing I was reading on your website, you talked a lot about like the power of self-belief and overcoming challenges and all that stuff. And I was just wondering if you could connect that to how we can like have athletes and swimmers kind of feel that even during quarantine, just to kind of connect it to the time we're in. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just talking about that.
Yeah. Well, okay. There's a couple things about being in quarantine right now that are kind of interesting. Like I've gotten asked a lot to like, hey, can you give advice to our team who is, not training right now and they're in quarantine? What can you say to them? And I'm like, okay, well, let me think back to when I was 15 and everything that I worked for got taken. Like it's so unprecedented that like I can't reflect on it, on a personal level. But I can, reflect on what I'm going through as an adult right now and the things that I've been looking forward to that I don't currently have anymore. And my mind goes to a lot of different places. First of all, one of the things I was talking to Natalie Hines this morning. She is on the U.S. national team. She's one of the she could make the Olympic team on the 400 free relay and the 100 free. She finished, I think her best finish is third place at NCAA's in the 100 free behind Simone Manuel and Leah Neal. And so she was part of the trifecta of the first 3 African-American women to go 1, 2, 3 in NCAA's. And Natalie swam for University of Florida and she's now training at Georgia. But after 2016, Natalie retired essentially for like almost 3 years. And she got the itch. A lot of people that retire unsatisfied, they get that itch of, Michael Phelps can probably talk about this better, but I don't feel like I accomplished everything that I want to accomplish. And so Natalie and I were talking this morning and I was like, Natalie, you made your comeback, like a year and a half ago. And after being out of the water for years and within 6 months, you were going best times. I have to believe that all of this time out of the water for you maybe gives you a little bit less anxiety than a lot of people who have never quite taken that much time off. And she was like, no, absolutely. Like everybody is better off than they really do think. I think as swimmers, we're so trained like, oh my gosh, I missed one day. I'm so far behind. I missed a week. I'm far behind. And now we're all missing months. But I think the better approach to this time is like all you're doing is letting your body heal and you're letting your body recover and you're letting your body get back to normal, back to its like strongest, healthiest self. And so when you get back in the water, like your muscles aren't going to be broken down. They're going to be stronger. And so just kind of shifting your perspective to this isn't a time where you're getting crazy out of shape. This is just a time where your body gets to recover. And there are so many people who have taken years off. I mean, Michael Phelps took years off before the Rio Olympics and came back better than ever. And so I have no doubt that just within, probably 6 weeks of training, like people are going to be back to their old selves and probably swimming way better than they ever anticipated. So just to try to ease a little bit of anxiety there, like no one's going to be worse and unable to, achieve like their greater dreams because of, a short stint out of the water, relatively short stint out of the water. But that being said, like, I think your mindset has a lot to do with that, how we approach these few like couple months and then, how we all mentally approach this probably slower transition back into the water and just seeing it as like this is all okay and I'm going to come out of this a better person. In the meantime, I've been attending webinars and learning about my mental strength. In the meantime, I've been working on my flexibility at home. In the meantime, like I've been getting better sleep than I've ever gotten because coach doesn't make me wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning for practice. So like just thinking about all the positives that you can take from this and bring those positives with you as you like, ease back into your training and swimming with your team, whatever that does look like is going to be a really important factor in how, everybody gets back to normal, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it was Dara Torres, right? That took
half a decade off.
Yeah. So long. And she was, and you're only getting older respectively. So, and she did it. But, on a scale, I think that we can all relate to, the coaches talked about, I talked about it with Andrew the other day, but, the pendulum has swung so far in one direction that when we do get back to swimming, I think we as coaches have a responsibility to not allow that pendulum to try to swing, back, because when it swings back, it would not, stop in the middle. It would go completely the other direction. And I also said, when is the last time, let's say we approach this summer as, not a full racing summer and it's more about training and getting back to it. When do we ever have 2 months, before the actual season starts, to just focus on the little things and ease back into it, and, not start in the beginning of September and rush to be fully in shape for that first meet in October. And,
I think it's a gift. I really do. I think you're right. And, kind of secretly in the back of my mind, I've always thought, I'm like, why does every sport have an off season, but swimming doesn't? Like, we maybe get like 1 or 2 weeks off the whole year, but this could be something that like really does help a lot of people, people that have been too anxious to take the time off to really recover from an injury that they have. People that have just been, hammering the yardage over and over again and work themselves into exhaustion. We could truly find some positives in this. And it's maybe something that, you pick things that like, oh, like this specific break, extended a little bit longer, actually helped our kids in the long run versus hurting them. And so maybe it's something that we see a little bit more year after year, where teams take even more time off. I don't think that would be a bad thing.
I think when I was in college, when I was at WSU, we took Wednesdays off, and it was up to us if we felt like we needed to swim, we could, but there was no practice on Wednesdays. And at the beginning of my career, like time at WSU, I would swim because I was more on the distance side, and I was like, well, I have to swim. I've always
the yardage, yeah.
I've always done so much yardage and so much this and so much that. And finally, when I let go of that, like later in my junior year and definitely through my senior year, and I was like, you know what, I am tired today. Like, I'm not going to swim. And I stopped stressing about not swimming that day. I did great. And I think there has been times, at least for me, where that mindset was a big disservice. That like, so if I missed a few days or we did take more time off, instead of relaxing and owning it, it stressed me out more. And, it kind of snowballed. So it's definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah. And I really do believe that there are positives that can come from this in the long run.
Definitely.
For our sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read an article earlier this week. There was a gal who, forgot where she went to school, did a master's thesis on retired female collegiate swimmers and the stress and anxiety that followed their being done with their time swimming. We talked to Gary a little bit about this a couple of days ago as well, what do you do at the end of your career, and how do you kind of deal with, hey, I don't have 7 days to train this week, and I don't have this purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of weaves into now a little bit as well. But talk a little bit about how at the end of your career, you kind of figured out what you were, you talked about it a little bit before. You started doing lessons, and that's where kind of lead was born. But there was a time in there where you got to come to terms with it being over.
Oh yeah. And it doesn't, like, I'm sure, Katrina, Kelly, you guys can relate to this too. I don't think it matters how far you take your sport, whether you're retiring from being an Olympian, you're retiring from being a college swimmer, your career ends in high school. When something that you're so passionate about and have spent so much time investing, your energy and just your part of your soul, it feels like when that comes to an end, it's just really hard. And that being said, I don't even think it matters what you're retiring from. I retired when I was 26. And when I say that to like a group of, business people or people that aren't necessarily athletes, they kind of get a chuckle like, oh, you retired at 26. Haha, that's funny. And I'm like, no, I really did retire. But I think if you're retiring at 26 or 76, it's still that feeling of like the air is just like, taken out of your lungs. And for me, after the 2012 Olympics, I think the Olympics ended in like August, and then, you do like a big press tour where you're doing appearances. We went to the White House. We did a ton of things. And it was like maybe around early October. I was sitting in my living room on a weekday, and I remember just like sitting there staring, and I was like, wait a minute. I do not have like anything to do today. I am not accountable to anybody or anything. And that was the first time it truly hit me, like, oh my gosh, like I need to figure out what's next. Like it took me until like there was nothing, not like, oh, let me just prepare for what's next while I finish swimming. No. I literally like sat there one day and was like, whoa, it's all over. And now what do I do? And I feel very fortunate that I had a good transition as far as transitions go. And that being said, I had some very, very hard days, but I also had a lot of, I felt very complete at the end of my swimming career. So at no point during my transition was I like, man, maybe I should go back and start swimming again and try for my 4th Olympics. I never like had those thoughts. It was always like, I want every day to kind of be like one more step forward for me on my next career path. And I have no idea what's at the top of this ladder, but I know that every day that goes by that I do something that kind of separates me from the mentality of I have to go to practice every day or I have to, like lift, do all this stuff. It's going to help me. And so something that I made a decision to do when I realized that I had nothing was I was going to say yes to every single thing that came my way. So at one point, I think I had like 4 or 5 different jobs. I was teaching private lessons. I was traveling, doing corporate speaking. I was doing clinics almost every weekend. I was a summer league swim coach. You name it. I said yes to everything. And I figured little by little, I would figure out what I don't like and what doesn't serve me. And that was how I would figure out what I did want to do because I didn't have a clear idea. And so I was like, well, I'll know for sure what I don't want. And just by doing that and by saying yes to everything is how, LEAD really came about. But I consider myself very lucky that was my transition path. But I know that for a lot of athletes, like, college athletes, high school athletes, it can be like brutal. And I have a lot of peers that are still struggling many, many years later with the transition. But I think finding things that you're passionate about is so important. If you're like, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about, then just go do stuff. Like just go do whatever it is that you can, say yes to whatever you can, and you'll figure out something.
Yeah, I love that and understand that.
Well, and I thank you for that because I think the world of swimming is better off for you having gone down that path. Anything else we haven't covered? Any final thoughts, ma'am or ladies?
Yeah, I got some final thoughts. Well, first of all, like, again, thank you guys for having me and for, having this conversation that I feel like more people should be having. And I know a lot of it was about my career, but I love the importance and the weight that you guys put on having women as coaches and giving young girls role models. And so I thank you as a team for, just being very forward thinking in that regard and doing what you guys are doing there and also bringing in specialists like, Dr. Megan and Coach Kristen and stuff like that. And my hope is that this is only the start of, a revolution of like supporting women athletes and it's something that grows and you guys are part of the beginning of it too. And I would love to see, I think in 2008, we had one coach on the Olympic team staff who was female and she was an assistant coach. And then in 2012, she was the head coach.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if that changed over the years from Olympic.
It did.
But then Terry got left off the staff in 2016. I don't think there was a woman.
There was not a woman. So we had this progression of a woman as an assistant. There's like 8 coaches on the Olympic staff, 1 assistant in 2008, 1 head coach in 2012, and then none in 2016. So we kind of ruined that streak. But, I would love LA 2028. Like, what if we had 6 women coaches on that Olympic staff? Like, can you imagine, how amazing that would be? And it's one of my favorite stats that I go back to time and time again. When you look at executives in business, people that are in the C-suite, so chief executive officer, CEO, CMO, CTO, whatever it is, it's like 94% of women that serve in executive roles in business are former athletes.
Division I athletes, I think, even.
Division I former, like how crazy, how mind-blowing is that? And just the role of like, you don't have to swim to make it to the Olympics, but you as an athlete, the things that you learn, the leadership skills, the communication, trial and error, putting everything on the line, being a good team member, your communication, all of that translates to everything else that you do in life. And it translates in a huge way. So more than one parting word, but I want to thank you guys for everything that you're doing, and just hope that it continues, and you grow your staff, and not only do you have more women coaches, but you have more girls on your team that stay in your sport as long as possible.
On that note, thank you, Kara, for joining us. I want to pipe in what you just said to my two daughters before they sleep all the time. You want to come say hi? You're standing right here. Wave. We'll let you wave. There's Eloise. She's gotten a lot taller than the last time you saw her.
You are taller. Holy cow. I like your headband too.
Say thank you.
Relay the message. Yeah. There.
Anyway, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all you do. And
this was awesome. I loved hearing all of your experience. And then, lead is just fantastic.
Oh, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah. Have a good day. We'll just say that.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Kara.